In this video, we'll look at universal design for learning for the higher education sector and how making just a few small adjustments to your approach to course design and delivery can make a big impact. And yes, I'll explain the elephant and the canary eventually. You've probably seen this quote around the place. Everybody is a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it's stupid. People all have their unique strengths, talents, and ways of approaching life, as well as having some challenges. Shutting them out of opportunities because of those challenges isn't what education should be all about. Universal design for learning is not about slowing things down. What it's about is ensuring that learning environments aren't barriers to learning. It shifts the focus from the notion that an individual learner might be broken to ensuring that the learning environment we create for students isn't broken. And here's where our canary comes in. Are you familiar with the use of canaries in coal mines to check air purity? Apparently, they used to take a little bird cage before they started work on the mines with a canary in it or some other bird and lower it down in to check for poisonous gases. Not a great job if you're a canary, but those canaries didn't die in vain, they saved lives. So if we extend that to learning design, if students at the margins, for instance, students for whom English is a second language, students with a learning or comprehension difficulties such as dyslexia, students with sight or hearing impairments. If these students are struggling and failing, rather than throwing an access plan at the issue, consider the use of canaries in coal mines. What is it about your course that is or could be a barrier for them? What if you fixed it for them might improve things for the rest of your learners? Providing a text-based explanation for charts and diagrams is an internationally recommended practice for accessibility and universal design. Sight-impaired students using screen reading software can't penetrate images with no description. But who else would benefit from an explanation of a chart, say one like this one? This chart was an explanation of a proposed new healthcare system in the US called Obamacare. However, even with simple charts and diagrams, they're not always easy to understand or see when you're presenting. Always explain your charts and diagrams, and everyone benefits, especially people, if you're presenting in public, sitting in the back row, who might not be able to see that 12-point font. So, who developed UDL? UDL was developed by founders of what is now CAST, the Center for Applied Special Technology, a nonprofit education research and development organization. CAST started in a pizza place near North Shore Hospital in Salem, Massachusetts in 1984, when 5 clinicians took out a $15,000 grant to answer the question, how can computer technology enhance learning for students with learning disabilities? In the 1990s, Ann Meyer and David Rose of CAST laid down some of the first principles of what was to become UDL. Let's dive into that. UDL is based on neuroscience combined with pedagogy, how one approaches teaching and the theories behind that, and social psychology. UDL recognizes that different parts of the brain work together to create learning. It also keeps in mind there is no average brain. Generally, sensory information is received by the recognition networks down at the back of the brain, is processed and relayed for meaning in the center of the brain, the affective networks, and is organized for response or action in the frontal lobes or the strategic networks of the brain. Variability about how these different networks process information is important to understand. It reminds us that learners do not have isolated learning styles, but instead rely on different parts of the brain working together within different contexts. We could bring in a neuroscientist and do a whole session just on this, but for now, that's all we need to cover as a way of setting up the principles of UDL. If you're interested in learning more about the neuroscience behind UDL, the CAST website has an excellent PDF download available at http://bit.ly/UDL brain. If you have a mobile device with the QR scanning code app, you can also scan this QR code to go directly to that web page. The UDL framework is a set of principles supported by a framework of guidelines and checkpoints developed over 30 years with input from more than 800 peer-reviewed articles. It combines pedagogy, social psychology, and neuroscience, as we mentioned earlier. Technology plays a supporting role because assistive technologies can make a huge difference for people with physical and cognitive challenges, and when you design for them, you'll benefit others. If we drill down under each principle, you will see that there are 9 guidelines or categories of options you can consider to build into your design of learning from the start, or to guide you in thinking about where your courses could be improved. Under each of these 9 guidelines, there are checkpoints that, when you go to the UDL website, come with practical ways of eliminating barriers and enhancing the learning experience. In this example, the guideline we're going to use is provide options for perception. If we drill down into the checkpoint, offer ways of customizing the display of information, we get to some in-depth ways of building in excellence and making improvements to the way we do things. Now, when you see so much description of one of 27 plus checkpoints, you may feel daunted. That's where the elephant comes in. The elephant is here to remind you of the old question, how do you eat an elephant? The answer to that one is one piece at a time. Sorry. We'll get back to that in a few minutes. First, let's check out the rest of the chart. The hierarchy of the rows in the UDL framework is structured from the basics of access to the loftier goals of changing beliefs, attitudes, and motivations. Let's look at each one of these rows. Access is the base level. Before students can engage, perceive, or plan in meaningful ways, they need options on ways in. There are technical, performance-based, and pedagogical ways that educators can make this happen. Build is the next level. It includes guidelines that suggest ways to develop effort and persistence, language and symbols, and expression and communication. Finally, the internalize row. Its guidelines suggest ways to empower learners through self-regulation, comprehension, and executive function. So, if we go back to the principles listed in the column headings, the first one is engagement. How many of you have found issues with tapping into the why for your students? What could some of the potential barriers be there, and how could universal design help? Here are some what educators in the field of UDL have to say about ways to increase engagement. First, provide diverse ways to interact with course instruction, content, and fellow students. Help students see the relevance of what they're learning in different contexts. Vary learning tasks. Consider linked activities that are different but work together to help students build knowledge. Vary the order of these. Ensure you provide prompt and frequent feedback. Use rubrics to clarify information and to provide concrete and timely feedback. Finally, build in opportunities with how tasks are designed. Give them a voice. Ask students to decide whether discussions could or should be synchronous or asynchronous. In other words, Could you use a real-time discussion tools such as Zoom or Link or Skype, or asynchronous such as a discussion forum or a text tool? What fires up one student isn't necessarily going to fire up another. So give students choices, risk mistakes, and learn from them. Tapping into learners' different interests and different contexts relative to the course of study demonstrates why students should learn content and when they will use it. The next principle is representation. This focuses on providing ways to present content and how to best support the understanding and comprehension of the information you provide. At the base of representation is accessibility, and at the base of all pages of many websites, you will find information about their commitment to accessibility as an organization. This commitment goes beyond access plans for students with disabilities to ensuring that organizations build in some basic features that will help everyone. Now, bringing the canary in the coal mine back into the picture for the moment, let's look at how making just one type of content accessible can benefit other people. How many of you seen this logo, 2 C's in a rounded white square, on a DVD or Blu-ray or on YouTube? Or how many of you have seen what looks like a square word cloud on a Netflix program? These indicate that closed captions are available for what you're watching. Closed captions are opt-in subtitles that are synced with the audio on a video to provide viewers with text they can read as they watch and listen. Closed captions work well for people with hearing impairment, sure, but think about who else benefits from closed captions. For people for whom English is a foreign language, closed captions offer another medium to help in understanding. Parents who need to keep an ear out for the baby monitor, or who have small children and live in a small apartment and study at night, can watch your videos with the sound off or use captions when the kids are at their noisiest. People trying to balance other activities in a busy life that include work, study, and family can use closed captions. You'll often see these at gyms. Finally, students revising their notes can look to the screen, look down, look back up again, and closed captions make their life a lot easier. YouTube offers closed captioning that you can automatically produce closed captions. Then you can download a text file, edit the word salad that can sometimes result, and re-upload it. So, one small change that can benefit a few, such as closed captions for people who might be hearing impaired, can end up benefiting most, if not all, of your students in some way. So when it comes to perceptions, there are some quick wins we can score with just a few changes. In addition to closed captions, when you're presenting, explain your charts and diagrams verbally. If you're publishing online, take the time in text to explain your chart or diagram. In your presentations, limit your bullet points. Hopefully, your students can read. Provide handouts for detailed information rather than reading it to them during your presentation. Online, break up text-heavy reading-heavy courses with different types of media. And finally, rather than just telling, take time to show, not just tell, so that students get a bigger picture view and sometimes a more authentic view of what you're presenting. The final principle is literally at the front of mind. Action and expression live in the prefrontal cortex or executive function of the brain. This is where we put learning into action. We engage with content, work to comprehend it, and here we decide what to do with it. Within a course or discipline, this principle is put into practice when we provide a variety of learning activities and recruit students in being strategic about their learning. Text is typically the go-to form of formative and summative assessments, especially given the university sector's relationship and dependency on tools such as Turnitin to check for plagiarism, and the time budgets when it comes to providing feedback. So, how can we provide diverse ways for students to express their understanding of course materials, demonstrate their knowledge, and to plan their study goals? After all, students will communicate in a wider range of ways in their future careers. Peer-to-peer feedback is one way we can provide a variety in our formative assessments and allow for different modes of expression. Instead of text, we can ask students to create infographics, mind maps, and then get peer-to-peer feedback. You can also use a compare and learn approach. Have students create a visual and then compare it to an exemplar and discuss the differences and gaps. When it comes to strategic thinking, project-based and problem-based learning methodologies are excellent ways to help students be more strategic about their learning and focus not just on the outcome in the form of a mark, but the process of getting there, the how. This video is hopefully just the start of your exploration of a way of developing a more inclusive approach to planning and design for education and training by considering the principles of universal design for learning to provide multiple ways of engagement, to provide multiple means of representation, and to provide multiple means of action and expression. And in doing so, hopefully we can help build purposeful, motivated learners who are resourceful and knowledgeable and are strategic and goal-directed. Here's a link to some resources I've put together focused on UDL in the higher education sector. That link is http://bit.ly/UDL_K_J. Here are the citations for the images I used, some of them from CAST, some from the US government. Other images were licensed from Presenter Media, including our lovely little canary and our elephant. And that finishes our introduction to universal design for learning for the higher education sector.